I knew I shouldn't have gone to the wedding. Not because I didn't care. God, no, I would have taken a bullet for Adam. But because watching the guy I've been quietly in love with since I was 19 marry someone else felt like sitting through a slow-motion car crash with a smile on my face. But I went anyway. There I was, sitting in the third row of some picture-perfect vineyard ceremony, pretending to be just another friend, clapping like it didn't feel like someone was peeling my chest open from the inside. Adam looked good. Like, too good. His hair was a little longer now, wavy and pushed back off his forehead, and he had that same lopsided smile that made people instantly like him. He wore a navy blue suit that somehow made him look even broader across the chest. And standing there under the archway, with the late September sun hitting his face just right, he looked like he belonged in some romantic drama on Netflix. Except he was marrying Danielle, and I was just the best friend with a front row seat. I clapped when everyone else did. I stood when I was supposed to stand, sat when it was time to sit, and kept my face neutral through it all. But the truth is, I wasn't really there. Not in the way everyone else was. I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere 4 years ago, when this all started. Back when Adam and I were just two dumb college roommates who didn't know yet that they were walking into each other's lives for good. We met sophomore year. Random dorm assignment. I was transferring in after a disaster of a first year at a different school, and he was already on campus, hauling a mini fridge into our shared room when I walked in with my suitcase. He grinned. "You must be Eli." "You must be Adam," I said. We shook hands, and that was it. The start of everything. We got along instantly, not in the fake, overly chummy way guys sometimes force when they're stuck together, but naturally. He was loud, charming, played guitar, always had people around. I was quieter, sarcastic, more the hang back and observe type. But it worked. We started doing everything together. Dining hall runs, late night walks, hours of binging shows in bed when we were supposed to be writing papers. People used to joke that we were basically married. I always laughed it off. What they didn't know was that I was already halfway in love with him, and I kept it to myself. Always. Adam was straight. Or so I thought. Girls came and went. Nothing serious, but enough to make it clear where his interests were, and I told myself not to hope. Not to see too much into the way he'd sometimes stare at me a second too long when we were alone. Or how he'd flop onto my bed when we talked, legs brushing mine, completely oblivious to what that did to me. We lived together until senior year, then he moved back home for a job offer, and I stayed in the city. We promised we'd keep in touch. And we did. For a while. Then came Danielle. The first time I saw them together on Instagram, I felt that familiar stab in my chest. She was beautiful, obviously. Smart, successful, exactly the kind of person you should bring home to your parents. I couldn't hate her. I just hated what she represented. An ending I hadn't even gotten the chance to try for. When Adam called me 6 months ago and said he was going to propose, I plastered on a smile, even though he couldn't see it over the phone. "You're really doing it?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. Then after a beat, "You think it's dumb?" "No," I lied. "She's great. You'll come to the wedding, right?" I hesitated. Of course. So I did. And now I was here, drinking my third gin and tonic at the reception, trying not to spiral. The music was loud. People were dancing, laughing, and Adam, he found me again. Out of everyone there, he still sought me out. "Eli," he said, walking up with his tie loosened and 2 drinks in hand. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied again. I was getting good at that. He handed me a glass. "I know this probably isn't your thing, but I'm glad you came." I nodded, unsure if I could speak without my voice cracking. For a second, he just looked at me. And in that second, something passed between us. Something unspoken, electric. His smile faded a little, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Then Danielle called his name from across the tent. Adam blinked, gave me a pat on the shoulder, and walked away. I watched him go. And I told myself that was it. That he was married now. That it was over. But then, hours later, long after the music died down and the guests had stumbled to their rooms, There was a knock on my hotel door. I opened it, and there he was. Adam, still in his wedding suit, tie gone, shirt untucked, looking at me like he couldn't hold it in anymore. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. And that was the moment I realized this story was only just beginning. I didn't say anything right away, just stepped aside and let him in. Adam walked past me slowly, looking around like he'd never been in a hotel room before, even though I was pretty sure he'd stayed in fancier ones with Danielle. He stood by the desk, running a hand through his hair, looking like he was trying to figure out how to start a sentence he hadn't rehearsed. I closed the door behind him. "Everything okay?" He didn't turn around right away. "Yeah, no, I don't know." That wasn't comforting. He finally faced me, and his eyes were bloodshot like he'd been crying. "Not recently, but recently enough." "I shouldn't be here," he said. "Then why are you?" I asked. It came out harsher than I meant it to. He winced a little, then nodded like he deserved that. I needed to talk to someone, and you're the only person who would actually get it." "Get what?" I walked over to the armchair in the corner and sat down, giving him space. "Okay," I said quietly. "Talk." He pulled the desk chair around so he could sit across from me. For a second, it looked like he was about to say something, then stopped. He exhaled slowly, shook his head. "This is gonna sound insane." "Try me." Adam swallowed. "I think I just made a mistake." My pulse kicked up. "You mean?" He nodded, cutting me off. "The wedding. All of it. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, Eli." My heart was thudding so hard I could barely hear. "You're married." "I know," he whispered, rubbing his eyes. "I know, but I couldn't stop thinking about you today. The whole time. When I said my vows, it felt wrong. Not because of her. Danielle's great. She's everything I should want. But..." He stopped again. I leaned forward, trying to stay calm. "But what, Adam?" He looked at me, and something in his expression broke open. "But you were the person I wanted to see when I turned around. You always have been." The room felt like it tilted. I couldn't speak. I literally had no words. It was like every version of me from the last 5 years, all the versions who had wanted this moment, suddenly collided in one explosion of disbelief and confusion. "Say something," Adam said, voice cracking. I don't know what to say." He stood up abruptly, pacing the room like he needed to burn the feeling out of his body. "I thought I could do it, that I could marry her, settle down, do what everyone expects. But you sitting there in the third row, I couldn't stop thinking about all the years we were together, everything we didn't say." "We were friends," I reminded him. "I know," he said, his voice loud now. "But that's the problem, Eli. I don't think I was ever just your friend." There was a pause, a heavy one. "I used to wake up in our dorm," he said quietly, "and just watch you sleep. I thought I was going crazy. I'd be dating someone, and then I'd come home and see you on the couch, hair messy, headphones on, and damn, I felt things I didn't have words for." I was stunned. Frozen. "I kissed a guy once in college," he added. "At a party, you were back home that weekend. I never told you." He kissed me and I let it happen. And afterward, I felt like the biggest fraud, like I'd crossed some line I wasn't allowed to. But I couldn't stop thinking about what it would have felt like if it had been you. He was crying now, not sobbing, just silent tears running down his face like he didn't know they were there. "I should have told you," he whispered. "Years ago." I stood up. I didn't know why. I just needed to move. This was everything I had wanted to hear. But not like this. Not after he'd just married someone else. Not in a hotel room at 1 a.m. after he'd said, "I do." "Adam," I said, "I've loved you since sophomore year." His eyes widened, and for a second I saw everything. Every unsaid word. Every look. Every moment we brushed past what could have been. "And I let it go," I added. "Because you were straight. Because you dated women. Because I thought there was no world where this would ever happen. He took a step closer. But it is happening. I shook my head. You're married. I don't care. You have to. He reached out, took my hand, and I didn't pull away. You're the person I should have said yes to, he said. Not Danielle. I looked down at our hands, mine smaller, paler, trembling. Then what now? He looked me dead in the eyes. I don't know, he said, but I'm not leaving this room until we figure it out. He didn't let go of my hand. I stood there, frozen, his palm warm against mine, every instinct in my body screaming that this was wrong. He just got married. And yet, there was this other voice, quiet but stubborn, saying this was what I had waited for. For years. For forever. I don't know what to do, I admitted, my voice barely audible. Then let's just not decide anything yet, Adam said, stepping even closer. Let's just talk. No pressure. Just you and me. Like it always was. I hesitated, then nodded. We both sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders nearly touching. The room was too quiet, the air too heavy with everything that had just been said. Adam leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, looking at the floor. I've never told anyone this, he said. Not even her. But when I proposed to Danielle, I didn't feel excited. I felt relieved, like I had finally picked a path and didn't have to think about it anymore. Like I could stop wondering what it meant that I kept thinking about you. I turned my head, studying him. So, all this time? He nodded slowly. I buried it. Pushed it so far down I didn't even recognize it anymore. Told myself it was just admiration or some kind of fluke. But then, at the reception, when I saw you standing by yourself drinking that gin and tonic, I chuckled under my breath. What about it? You looked sad, but not just sad. Gone. Like you weren't really there. And it hit me that I did that to you. That by choosing her, I'd cut off the one person who ever really saw me. I looked away, throat tight. Do you remember that night after midterms junior year? He asked suddenly. I blinked. When we stayed up playing video games till like 4 a.m. and ate half a pizza? He nodded. And then you fell asleep on the couch, and I pretended I was tired too just so I could sleep next to you. I remembered that night. I had woken up to find us shoulder to shoulder, his hand half on my thigh, breathing soft and close. I had thought about it for years afterward. I thought that meant nothing, I said. He shook his head. It meant everything. I swallowed hard. So why didn't you say anything back then? Because I was terrified, he said. Because I didn't even know what it was. Because I didn't want to lose you. Well, I said, gesturing around the hotel room. You might have waited a bit too long, don't you think? He flinched. I know. Believe me, I know. Silence stretched between us again. I don't want to hurt her, he said finally. Danielle, she didn't do anything wrong. She's amazing. And I stood up there today, and I lied. I looked at him, surprised. I said I'd love her forever, and I meant it in a way. But I didn't say what I should have said. That I'd been in love with someone else for years, and I was too much of a coward to admit it. My heart cracked a little. I didn't know what to feel. This was everything I had dreamed of hearing. But it came wrapped in guilt, in complication, in timing so spectacularly wrong, it almost felt cruel. You're gonna have to tell her, I said eventually. If this is real, if you mean it, you can't keep living like this. I know, he whispered. I just needed to see you first. Needed to know if it was just some fantasy in my head, or if maybe you felt it too. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached up and brushed a tear off his cheek with my thumb. He leaned into the touch, his eyes closing briefly like he hadn't been touched like that in years. And then he kissed me. It wasn't desperate or sloppy. It was slow, aching, like he was trying to say all the things he'd never dared to speak out loud. His hand came up to cup the back of my neck, and mine slid into the front of his shirt, fingers twisting in the fabric as I kissed him back. I had dreamed of this 100 times, but the real thing was something else entirely. We pulled apart slowly, breathless. I've wanted to do that for so long. he murmured. Yeah, I said softly. Me too. We didn't say anything for a while after that. Just lay back on the bed, side by side, not touching, but so close we could feel the heat radiating off each other. After a long silence, he spoke again. I can't go back to the suite tonight. I turned my head. What are you going to do? He looked at me with a tired smile. I think I need to tell her the truth. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Tonight. You sure? He nodded. I've lied long enough. He sat up, ran a hand through his hair again, and stood. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't expect you to wait for me or promise anything. But I had to do this. I had to tell you. I stood too, following him to the door. He opened it halfway, then turned back, resting his hand on the frame. I love you, Eli. I always have. Then he walked out. And I just stood there, staring at the door, wondering if the last 10 minutes had actually happened, wondering if maybe, just maybe, my story with Adam wasn't over after all. I didn't sleep that night. I just laid there on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling, heart thudding slow and deep, like it was processing something too big to fully understand. My lips still tingled from the kiss. My mind kept playing his words on loop. I love you, Eli. I always have. And he was gone, just like that. He walked out of the room and back into the mess of his brand new marriage to someone else, carrying the truth with him like it was suddenly too heavy to hide anymore. I had no idea what he was going to do. I didn't know if he'd actually tell her, or if he'd wake up tomorrow, pretend it never happened, and go right back to his new wife, to the house, to the future they'd planned. I didn't know if this was going to be just one of those nights we never talked about again. All I knew was that I couldn't be the one to bring it up. Morning came fast. I showered, dressed, packed up. I avoided the hotel breakfast because I couldn't stomach the idea of bumping into Danielle or, God forbid, his parents. Instead, I got in my car and started the drive back to the city without saying goodbye to anyone. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. Adam, hey, I told her. I stared at the screen parked on the shoulder of the highway, my fingers suddenly numb. Me, you okay? There was a long pause. Adam, no, but I'm doing the right thing. I didn't know what that meant. Was he divorced already? Were they just separating? Was he sitting in a hotel lobby right now trying to figure out where to go next? I wanted to ask all of that, but instead I just typed, me, where are you? He responded almost immediately. Adam, halfway to your place. My breath caught. I stared out at the traffic whipping by in the opposite direction, then turned the car around and headed back toward home. When I got to my apartment, he was already sitting on the front steps, a small duffel bag at his feet, still in his suit from the night before, minus the jacket and tie. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept either. His eyes were puffy, his hair a mess, and yet somehow he still looked like the Adam I remembered, just stripped down, raw in a way I'd never seen before. I walked up slowly, unsure of how to begin. Hey, I said. He stood up, grabbed his bag. Can I come in? I nodded, unlocked the door, and let us both inside. He dropped the bag by the couch and didn't sit down right away. Instead, he turned to face me like he had something important to get off his chest. I told her everything, he said, about us, about last night, about how I've felt for years. I blinked. And? She cried, he said quietly. A lot. She didn't scream. Didn't even curse at me. Just looked at me like I was a stranger. My stomach turned. I felt like the worst person in the world, he continued. But then she said something that stuck with me. What? She said, I knew. I just hoped I was wrong. That hit harder than I expected. I walked over to the kitchen, grabbed 2 glasses of water, and handed him one. He took it, his fingers brushing mine for just a second too long. So what now? I asked. I don't know, he said. I haven't figured out what happens tomorrow. Or next week. I just know I'm not going back. Not to that life. Not to pretending. We both sat down on the couch, side by side. He leaned back, letting his head rest against the cushion, eyes closed for a second like he was finally letting himself breathe. You're brave, I said. He opened one eye, looked at me. You think so? Yeah, I nodded. You blew up your whole life. For the truth. That takes guts. Adam gave a quiet, bitter laugh. I just hope it wasn't for nothing. It wasn't, I said. You said what needed to be said. That's never nothing. We sat there for a long while, not speaking. Just sitting in the quiet hum of my apartment, both of us lost in thought. Eventually, he leaned his head against my shoulder, and I let him. I rested mine against his in return. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt something settle inside me. Not everything was fixed, not by a long shot, but for the first time it felt like maybe it could be. The first night Adam stayed with me, we didn't sleep together. I think that's important to say, because everything about the situation could have easily gone that direction. The years of tension, the lingering feelings, the weight of what had just happened. But instead, we lay on opposite sides of my bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling like we were 19 again, and life hadn't yet turned us into versions of ourselves we barely recognized. Do you regret it? I asked after a long silence. He turned his head toward me. What? Telling her? Or telling you? Both, he thought for a second. No, I regret waiting this long, but not saying it. I nodded, unsure what to say next. Adam shifted slightly, propping himself up on one elbow. You know what's weird? This is the first time in a long time I feel like I'm not lying to anyone, not even myself. I looked over at him. Feels good, doesn't it? Scary as hell, he said with a small grin. But yeah, good too. I smiled, and for the first time since the wedding, it wasn't forced. The next few days were quiet. Adam didn't leave my apartment, except to go for walks or grab groceries. He used my spare toothbrush, borrowed my sweatshirts, and made coffee in the mornings like we'd been living together all along. There was something bizarrely domestic about it all. But we didn't talk much about what would come next. It wasn't avoidance exactly. It was more like we were both too afraid to say something that might ruin the fragile peace we'd built. Every time I thought about asking him, "What are we now?" I swallowed it. He'd just left his wife. His whole life was still smoldering. I couldn't expect clarity from someone still stepping through the wreckage. One evening, I came home to find him cooking. Like, actually cooking. Not just heating up leftovers. He was standing at the stove in a pair of old gym shorts and a tank top, hair damp from a shower, stirring something that smelled suspiciously like garlic and butter. "What is this?" I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. "Linguine with clams," he said, flashing a smile. "Don't get too excited. It's from a can." I'm still impressed. He set a plate in front of me, poured 2 glasses of wine, cheap, probably from the bodega down the block, and we sat on the couch eating like it was the most normal thing in the world. But it wasn't. Nothing about this was normal. After dinner, we didn't bother turning on the TV. We just sat there, our legs stretched out on the coffee table, half listening to the hum of the fridge and the occasional honk from the street below. "You ever think about what would have happened if we'd talked about this sooner?" he asked. "All the time." He looked over at me. "What do you think would have happened?" I shrugged. "Maybe we'd be living together already. Maybe you'd never have proposed. Maybe we'd have screwed it all up back then." He chuckled. "Yeah, that last one sounds likely." We sat in that quiet for a while, and then he reached over, his hand brushing mine. I didn't pull away. "Can I sleep in your bed tonight?" he asked softly. "You've been sleeping in my bed all week," I said. "No, I mean with you. Not on the edge. Not like roommates." I paused, searching his face. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "I don't want to wait anymore." That night, he curled up against me like he was trying to make up for every inch of distance we'd ever kept between us. His hand rested on my chest, his thumb brushing back and forth like he was memorizing the shape of my heartbeat. We didn't rush anything. There was no urgency, no need to prove anything. We just existed together in the dark, skin on skin, hearts thudding slow and steady. At one point he whispered, "I always wondered what this would feel like." And he kissed my neck, slow and warm, better than I imagined. We fell asleep like that. Tangled limbs, quiet breaths, the kind of silence that finally felt earned. For the first time in years, I wasn't dreaming about what it would be like to be with Adam. Because I was. The morning after we finally shared a bed, not just a space, but a real moment, I expected things to feel awkward. I waited for the weird silence, the avoidance, maybe even regret flickering in Adam's eyes. But it didn't come. I woke up with his arms still around me, his breath warm against my shoulder. When I shifted, he stirred slightly but didn't pull away. Instead, he mumbled, "You smell like that coconut shampoo you always used in college." That made me laugh. "You remember that?" "Of course I do," he said, eyes still closed. "I used to steal it when I ran out of mine." I turned onto my side, looking at him. He looked peaceful in a way I hadn't seen in years. Maybe ever. "You okay?" I asked. He opened one eye. "Honestly? Yeah." We lay there for a few minutes in comfortable silence before he finally sat up, stretching. I should probably start thinking about, real life again. Like what? I don't know. Getting my own place, a job, legal stuff with the divorce. The word hit like a splash of cold water. Divorce. It was real. This was real. Adam must have sensed my tension because he turned toward me, his expression soft. "Hey, I know it's a lot. I know I blew up my life and kind of landed in yours without a plan." "You didn't blow up my life," I said. "You just landed in it. Finally," he smiled. "I'm not expecting you to be my everything right away," he said. "But I want to figure this out, with you, if you still want that." "I do," I said without hesitation. "But only if we're honest. No more guessing. No more pretending we're just friends when we're not." Adam leaned in, kissed me gently. No more pretending. Later that day, we walked down to the waterfront. It wasn't anything fancy, just plastic-iced coffees in hand, sneakers crunching against the gravel as we strolled along the path that ran beside the river. But it felt important, like a test of what this looked like in daylight, outside the walls of my apartment. In public, a couple passed us holding hands. Adam glanced at them, then looked at me. After a beat, he reached out and took my hand too. And just like that, something shifted. He didn't flinch, didn't look around nervously. He just laced our fingers together like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You okay?" I asked, echoing his words from earlier. He squeezed my hand gently. "Yeah, I think I finally am." We walked like that for a while, just two guys on a river path in the city, no signs above our heads, no need to explain anything to anyone. He didn't let go the entire time. When we got back to the apartment, Adam offered to cook again. It was something simple, pasta, salad, garlic bread. Nothing fancy, but the way he moved around my kitchen like he belonged there made something ache in my chest. A good ache. After dinner, we sat on the couch and talked. This time, not about us, but about the past. College. The times we missed each other by inches. The almost moments we'd buried. He told me about the time he almost kissed me after we passed out drunk, watching horror movies on Halloween sophomore year. How he'd freaked out and ghosted me for 2 days after. How he'd gone on a date with a girl the next week just to prove to himself that he was normal. "I kept trying to write a different story," he admitted. "One that didn't have you in it. But no matter what I did, I always circled back." I rested my head on his shoulder. "Well, I'm glad you finally gave up on that version." He laughed, a little sadly. "Me too." That night, we made love for the first time. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy or impulsive. It was slow, intentional, years of unsaid things pouring out in touches, glances, gasps in the dark. There were moments we both got overwhelmed, not because we were unsure, but because it was real. This thing we'd carried for so long had finally landed, and it was bigger, scarier, and more beautiful than either of us had expected. Afterward, we lay tangled in the sheets, the windows cracked open to let in the hum of the city and the occasional breeze. "I'm scared," he said, voice barely audible. "Of what?" "That I don't deserve this. You. After everything." I turned my head, kissed his temple. "You do. We both do." And in that moment, I believed it. Even if the road ahead was uncertain, complicated, full of things still unsaid and undone, we were here, together, and for the first time in years, that felt like enough. The days that followed didn't feel like a honeymoon. They felt like a reset. Real life crept in, as it always does. Adam started getting calls from mutual friends who'd heard whispers about the wedding fallout. Some were confused, some were angry, a few were just nosy. Danielle didn't go public with anything, but the silence was loud. Adam didn't try to defend himself. He just told people, gently, that the wedding was off, and that it was his decision. That was enough for most of them to fill in the blanks. One afternoon, he got a call from her. He took it on the fire escape while I stayed inside, pretending not to listen, even though I turned down the TV just enough to hear the tone of his voice. When he came back in, he looked exhausted. "She's okay," he said, sitting down beside me. "Hurt, but okay. She said she doesn't hate me," which almost makes it worse. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just reached over and took his hand. That night, he told me he was ready to go. "Go where?" I asked. "Get a place of my own," he said. "Close by. I love being here, but you didn't sign up for me crashing on your couch and taking over your closet." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say you can stay as long as you want, but I knew what he meant. This wasn't about space, it was about starting over with intention. "You sure?" I asked. He nodded. "If this is going to be real, and I want it to be, it can't be because I needed a place to land. It has to be a choice." And it was. Over the next few weeks, Adam found a small studio in my neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it had good light and a kitchen he liked. We helped paint the walls together, white, with one bold navy accent, like some corny metaphor about wiping the slate clean. He started working freelance, consulting gigs, odd jobs, and for the first time since I'd known him, he seemed genuinely settled in himself. As for us, it wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, hard conversations. He'd flinch at small things sometimes. A couple holding hands in public, a question about his wife from someone who didn't know. But he got better. We both did. We went on actual dates, to restaurants, to bookstores, to a quiet little bar that played nothing but 90s R&B and served cheap cocktails in mismatched glassware. People stared sometimes. He noticed. But he didn't let go of my hand. One Saturday, almost 6 months after the wedding, we were lying in bed in his new place, just reading and listening to music. It had become our new tradition. Lazy weekends, no agenda, just time together. "You ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't shown up at your hotel room that night?" he asked. I looked over my book. "All the time." "What do you think?" I shrugged. "I think I'd still be carrying all that weight, pretending I was fine, probably seeing someone else who wasn't you, probably still comparing them to you in my head." He smiled. "I was such an idiot." "You were scared." He nodded. "Yeah, but not anymore." He rolled toward me, resting his head on my chest, arms wrapping around me with ease that only comes from knowing someone down to their bones. "I love you, you know," he said. I kissed the top of his head. "Yeah, I know, but I really love you." "Okay, now you're just bragging." He laughed, and the sound filled the small apartment like sunlight. I looked around the room, bare walls, a half-built bookshelf, laundry still in a pile in the corner, and thought to myself, this is it. This is what it was all for. Not a perfect life, but a true one, built not on obligation or fear or some script we thought we were supposed to follow, but on choice, on love, on finally telling the truth.